everyone, and welcome to God's Plan, Your Part, a podcast where our goal is to read the entire Bible in a year, seeking to understand God's plan of redemption while discovering daily and practically your part in it. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're looking at Ezekiel chapter 22 and 23. What's interesting about today is it kind of helps to answer some questions that I was dealing with or kind of sifting through yesterday when I was thinking about some of the sins that were being committed by God's people. So oftentimes I think of idol worship as being the most prominent sin, but there were so many other sins that were happening at the same time that are mentioned and kind of just like called out in chapter 22, which is really helpful for me because some of these things, honestly, are things that, not all of them, but are things that we also deal with today. These are things that really catch us in our own lives, and I think we can somewhat relate to some of these things that are going on in this chapter. So it's not so far off that it's just this idol worship that was going on that God was judging them for. So interesting.
I think that is a common question that people have. Like, wow, they just really liked bowing down to wooden animals, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, what's an interesting question in my mind is what came first? Because if you look over chapter 22, which we always encourage you to do so, I just started like underlining and circling sins that were called out and groups that were called out. So if you were able to see, someday you will when we actually do this on video, if you were able to see what my Bible looks like just from chapter 22, as we were reading it, as Jenny was reading it, I was just underlining and circling. Like I have so many underlines and circles. It's like you were bent on shedding blood. You were extortioners against people. You were profaning Sabbaths. You were uncovering nakedness. You were taking bribes. There's another call out for extortion. There's disregarding Sabbaths. There's robbery. There's oppression. There's extortion again. There's no justice. I mean, there's a lot of sins called out in just one chapter, and it's like almost this exhaustive list. Mm-hmm. And so the question in my mind is, were they worshiping idols first, or were they doing all these evil things first, or did it kind of occur all together? And I think what kind of gets my mind thinking that way is that in the ancient world, first of all, believing that there was only one God was like very crazy. Mm-hmm. Like most people did not see the world that way. Pretty much no one saw the world that way except for God's people, the Israelites. The reason that people did not worship just one God is because they worshiped all these various different gods of various different issues. So if you were super into weird sexual things, you would go and worship these gods by doing crazy sexual things. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to have better crops, you would go and worship a god that promised better crops. If you wanted more money, you would go and worship a god that would give you more money. And so it's almost like this weird spiritual stamp put on pretty common sinful temptations that we experience today. And really, I think, we're not going and bowing down to gods that will give us more money, although sometimes we do. Kind of this postmodern age has given us all the sins without any of the gods. So it's easy to look at the idolatry and think, well, I'm not carving up calves and, casting little metal figures, even though that still happens today. Most of us are not falling into those sins, but we're falling into the sins that those gods represent. Yeah. And so don't separate yourself from these people and think, well, I don't have any golden calves in my neighborhood. Think about the things that they were doing that was drawing them to worship those things, because we still struggle with those things. There's definitely still all kinds of crazy sexual sin all around us. There's definitely still extortion and selfishness all around us. There's definitely still oppression of like not well represented groups all around us. So you can read Ezekiel 22 and you can be like, man, I'm kind of nervous about where we're at.
I was just going to say, it kind of freaks me out a little bit. Like, shoot, we've come to a place where so many things are permissible anymore because it's like, well, I'm living my life and you can live yours. That, like, what is right, what is wrong anymore. And there have been instances throughout history where God's people have been in similar boats and he like completely destroys them. So it's like freaky, you know?
I'll tell you a crazy parallel that I've been thinking about, and this is like kind of controversial, but the one of the extreme sins that they were doing is they were killing their kids and sacrificing their kids to idols. Well, why were they doing that? Well, they assumed that if they killed their kids and sacrificed them to whatever idol it was, that they would gain some kind of success, some kind of prosperity, some kind of wealth. If they killed their kids, that would enable them to pursue that better option. How is that not similar to abortion and the message that surrounds it? Like, hey, yeah, I mean, it's you can look it up. Like, there are so many people that are like, well, I can't sacrifice my career to this. I can't afford this. I can't, so we sacrifice children to the God of success. And I know that's like a little bit, some of you I might be rubbing you a little bit the wrong way. That's not my intent, but there's a lot of similarities here that we're not quite willing to recognize. And we need to be really, really, really careful.
Yeah, so I was just looking through this list and it was helpful to me because I think sometimes we do box up the Israelites as those big dummies that didn't listen to God and worshipped little tiny idols or big giant idols. But we can do the same thing if with idols that may not have a physical form but have like serious lasting impacts in our souls and our minds and our hearts. So that was helpful for me. I don't know if you want to dig any more into that or
there's just so much stuff that we should be aware. Like, for example, they're known as a people bent on shedding blood because they want to gain things. Like, you can't tell me that there's not lots of shedding of blood for personal gain.
A lot of it is selfish versus selfless.
Yes.
And we can all fall into it for sure. But a lot of the things in this list is just taking on your own selfish wants, ambitions, whatever, at the expense of someone else.
Father and mother are treated with contempt.
Yeah.
Have you heard any situations or scenarios like that? Yes. Just watch any cartoon.
Yeah.
The fatherless and the widow are wronged within you. Have you heard any stories of fatherless children being like just disappearing into nothingness so that they can be taken advantage of? Of course you have. Like, don't make Ezekiel something that's like, well, yeah, it's like some old dusty story. It's like, wow, actually it's applicable to us today. I guess like I might be erring on talking about it too much, but it's not something that's not a problem. It remains a problem. And that the root of the problem is that we're not obeying the voice of the Lord. We're not listening to the statutes. What we talked about yesterday, like when you obey God's law, you live and your life is well. It's not restrictive. It's not demeaning. It's actually life-giving. Yeah. And so we just need to continue to encourage people, I think on a one-on-one basis. Like you fight this fight one life at a time to turn from your wicked ways and pursue life that is life in Christ. So then in 23, and I feel like I'm already getting long, so I apologize, but 23 talks about these two women that are sisters, Oholah and Oholibah. It's basically Israel in the north and Judah in the south. And probably the biggest thing, there's probably two big takeaways. One, they're both wicked. They both are drawn to lustful relationships with wicked people. So Israel in the north is drawn to the Assyrians. And what's crazy is that when the Assyrians devour Israel, the chapter actually says, and we've heard this before, that Judah becomes even more wicked. Like they see the judgment happen, and instead of being like, whoa, we need to turn away from our sin, they're actually like, wow, we're going to be even worse than that because these Babylonians are hot. It's pretty weird. And I mean, if you don't believe me, read it for yourself. It's kind of an odd chapter. But the point of the chapter is there is no end to the wickedness they're willing to pursue. And so ultimately, and this is the theme of the book, there will be judgment, there will be destruction, because God has given extensive opportunities to turn from sin, and they just refuse to take it.
So I guess something today is to reflect on your own heart, your own life. Some of these things that are like so obvious in this chapter, that may be creeping in on your own life, or things around you, or things that you know of that you can speak into, or even just like challenge yourself to not separate yourself so far from the faults of the past of God's people, and how maybe your life can reflect some of those things in ways that maybe you're just not really thinking about. But ask God to help reveal those things. Maybe there's like pride in your heart, or things that you are considering yourself better than others, or treating others with like the respect, or not with the respect that they are due, or just any of those things that can just really creep in and become an idol without the physical form. So I would just encourage you to pray to God today, ask Him to reveal those things to you, and really strive to not allow that to be an idol that you are like shackled to. So thanks for joining us again for Ezekiel today. We'll see you back for some more Ezekiel tomorrow.
Thanks so much for listening to God's Plan, Your Part. If anything stuck out to you, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to receive a Bible, you can email us at godsplanyourpart@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider supporting us through the link in our description. We love that you're on this journey with us, and we hope you have a great day. See you tomorrow.